Quick little update here. So right now I'm trying to adjust these rockers for proper geometry. So I've been shimming them up and experimenting with different push rod lengths until I've gotten to this point where I have 3 thick shims and 2 thin shims under the rocker there. Push rod length is 6.4750, and with this setup right now, at mid lift, the trunnion and the center of the roller are pretty much at a 90-degree angle to the valve tip, so proper mid lift geometry, or very near to it. It's a lot of shims. I'm not 100% certain if that's ideal. Got to look into that a little more, and that's kind of an odd push rod length. So hopefully I can get a 6.4750 push rod. I've set up this little sheet just to organize for the future, just show exactly what I've got going on with each push rod, because I'm going to have to individually do this with each of them. Same length push rod, obviously. Probably the same shims on most of them, if not all of them. And right now we're just going to turn the motor over here to check the sweep. Ooh. Check the sweep on the valve tip. She goes back up, and we'll pull that rocker off, and I'll give you a look at the sweep with that many shims and that length push rod. Three thick shims, 2 thin shims, 6.4750 push rods. And by the way, you know, people say you can't roll the motor over with the actual springs on a push rod length checker. Well, that's what I'm doing right now, and the trick flow checker, it's holding up to these packed springs that are good to 600 lift. So good job, trick flow. Your checking tool is pretty tough. Anyway, I'll get back to you real quick and I'll show you the pattern that I've got on the tip. So try and focus this. Oh, it's tough to get this kind of focused. There we go. So yeah, with that set up, that's the sweep we've got across the valve tip. Now you can see it's closer to the exhaust side, slightly, but it is the narrowest pattern I've managed to get. So with all those shims and the 6.4750 push rods, we've got pretty much perfect mid-lift geometry, and that's where the pattern ended up being. It's not perfectly centered, but it's pretty close, and it is the narrowest that I managed to get. It was much thicker with no shims and bad geometry. It was initially with no shims and the stock length push rods. That pattern was nearly point 0.1 across. We've got that down to 0.0500 here, which is pretty darn good. You want it to be under 0.0600 is my understanding. So 0.0500 is pretty good. And people, you know, they want it dead center, but using the mid-lift geometry theory, it's more important to have it to have the geometry correct rather than having it center on the valve tip. So I think this is pretty much what I'm going to run with. Hopefully I can get those push rods. Anyway, yeah. Peace out. We'll get back to you later. Today we're playing with children's toys. Right now we're measuring piston to valve clearance. I can only do this one at a time because I only have the one solid lifter. But that's what intake looks like. I'm about to slice it in half and do a measurement, and we'll see what we got. Try and get you in there and you can see what we've got for piston to valve clearance on the intake side. So we're not hitting. It looks like we're inside the valve relief, which is kind of to be expected with 1.9 valves, but it's nice to see that it's inside the relief, obviously, because otherwise it'd probably be hitting. I'll just do a quick measurement. Bear in mind this is without the gasket, so whatever measurement we got, we're going to have to add the compressed thickness of the gasket to that number. So even without the gasket, we've got that much clearance, and I'll do a measurement and show you what it is. See if I can get that to focus. Exhaust piston to valve clearance. It looks like we have even more than the intake. Tons of room, but I'll cut that in half and we'll have a look at that too. Hello everyone. So the project's coming along. I've just finished priming the oil system. So I got oil coming up through all of these Cobra rockers. I've just put the driver's side, or sorry, passenger side valve cover back on. But yeah, I had that off when I was priming, and I made sure oil was coming up through all the rockers. All the lifters are pumped up now. I don't think I did any video about setting up these rockers, but I ended up shimming them up 0.090. So that's 2 thick shims and 1 thin shim from the crane set. And these are 6.4 inch push rods, Comp Pro Magnum, hardened. And with that, the reason I shimmed them up is to get a little bit better geometry. With no shims, these things were, geometry was terrible. The sweep across the valve tip was like, what was the measurement? It was like a lot. Like, I managed to get it down to, with this setup, down to like 0.0650 or something like that. 0.650? 0.0650? I can't remember. You know what I mean though. It was like 1,000 with no shims. So I shimmed them up a little bit, and the sweep is both smaller and it's more centered on the valve tip. In fact, pretty much exactly centered. I am aware that centered doesn't matter as much as good geometry, but in order to get perfect geometry with these, I'd have to shim them up like so much that the pedestal wouldn't even be in the channel. Like way too much. So this is a compromise, you know. Like everything when you get aftermarket parts and put them together, you kind of got to figure stuff out, don't you? I don't know if I can get a good look in there and you can see sort of how much shim there is. Hard to get light in there. Get under there. So you can see how much shim there is, but you can see the pedestal's still in the channel, which is fine. with this, I'm also aware that you're taking, for every bit you shim them up, you are taking bolt out of the hole. So these, with no shim, would have slightly over a ½ inch in the hole, like 0.535 I think it was, and with these 3 shims it's 0.04350 I think, so a little bit less than ½ an inch, but still plenty of thread in there. I think we should still be okay. By the way, these are all set to between half a turn and 3/4 of a turn of preload on all of them. Some of them are near to 3/4, some are half or a little past half, but within spec. So yeah.